Well, hello, Nativity Bibleheads. It is Dr. Wayne, and it is time for Bible Study Wednesday. We are in 2 Kings chapter 15 today. 2 Kings chapter 15 is part of these three chapters, 13, 14, 15, where the narrator is really just kind of phoning it in. Just giving us this paradigmatic history with these regular kind of lines that we've heard over and over again about whether they did evil in the sight of the Lord or did right in the sight of the Lord, and they slept with the ancestors and all this. I'm going to, at some point, delve off into, I don't know if it's going to be next week or the week after, but soon, there are some prophets, some books of the prophets, namely Hosea and Amos, Micah, Isaiah, eventually Jeremiah. Those books give us a little bit more coloring, if you will, about what was going on historically. Remember, what our narrator here is very obsessed with one particular viewpoint, and that is his Deuteronomistic proclivities, his inclination to give us just how faithful was the king in keeping to the Mosaic covenant. Remember, when we talk about the Deuteronomistic historian, we're talking about the narrative voice that we heard in the book of Deuteronomy all the way through Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. Very much is wanting to hold everybody to the standard of the law of Moses. How well did the king do? How well did he do? And this is, it limits his vision of what he's going to describe. He doesn't tell us everything, okay? His main thing is the law of Moses. How well did he keep Israel from Baal worship? How well did they do at limiting worship to just Jerusalem? This is always a problem. Verse 1 of chapter 15. In the 27th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, King Azariah, son of Amaziah of Judah, began to reign. Now, when we hear Jeroboam and we hear this name of King Azariah, we need to, there's got to be a little bell that goes off on our head. It's like, oh, King Jeroboam. He is Jeroboam II, had a long reign, although we don't get a whole lot of detail about this lengthy reign. We do in historical sources outside of Kings. Jeroboam was the king that at the time when the ministry of the prophet Hosea was going on, and Amos, and this thing where it says in his 27th year, King Azariah, son of Amaziah. King Azariah is the same is King Uzziah. Uzziah, who is he? He was that king that was in charge when Isaiah started his ministry. Remember, he starts out, when he gives his vision of, it was in the such and such year of Uzziah. Well, that was his call experience. So we are firmly in that realm of time when these, the name prophets, the book writing prophets, if you will, if we can call them that, are abounding. And at some point, I'm going to need to diverge into those before we finish the book of Kings, probably, because we've got to fill out the more of what was going on, okay? So here we have it. He began to reign. Verse 2, 2 Kings 15, verse 2. He was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. That's a pretty long one, isn't it? We're talking about King Azariah, who came to be known as Uzziah. And he reigned 52. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. This is what I mean by paradigmatic history. These lines, these well-worn lines, he's used them over and over and over again, especially with the kings of Judah. We always get the mother's name. But whether or not they did right or did ill in the sight of the Lord, we always get that. About the thing about the high places, nobody ever seems to take the high places away, except I guess, I don't know, I don't know if that was something, well, no, Jehu, that was a northern kingdom thing. So the high places are a problem in Judah because the only proper place is Jerusalem for any personal, for any sacrificial worship in the eyes of our narrator. Okay, the Lord... Verse 5, the Lord struck the king so that he was leprous to the day of his death and lived in a separate house. Okay, anytime we see the word leprosy, we know what leprosy is. You know, it's that skin disease, blah, 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 right? Well, the biblical word we have for this disease isn't necessarily just leprosy. It is a word that describes a multitude, a plenitude, several skin diseases, okay? Even though the narrator notice he doesn't say any judgment about it. He doesn't give us any story about what happened, why it happened and all that. You know what? If you read this same story in Chronicles, okay, and which we'll get to eventually, it fills it out. It's much more, tells us a nice story. It's a fun story. Well, anyway, it justifies, if you will, why the Lord would do such a thing. We don't have that here, do we? No. And lived in a separate house. Jotham was the king's son. Let's call him Jotham. Jotham, okay? Jotham, the king's son, was in charge of the palace, governing the people of the land. So it's kind of like a co-regency. So, even though he was 16 when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years, part of that time might overlap with when his son, who took, basically did everything. Kind of like when Eleanor did that for Franklin. Remember that? When he was kind of like was incapacitated. Now, the rest of the acts of Azariah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Annals of the kings of Judah? Azariah slept with his ancestors. They buried him with his ancestors in the city of David. His son Jotham succeeded him. So everything's paradigmatic there. There's only just one tidbit that we get outside of our Deuteronomistic historians' judgments. We only get one little thing, and that's the thing about him being struck leprous. But we're not told any story about it. Okay, moving on. In the 38th year of King Azariah of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, reigned over Israel in Samaria 6 months. So the scene is shifting from the southern kingdom, Judah, back to the northern kingdom. We'd already been told that, that Jeroboam had died, but now we're being told that it is about the reign of his son Zechariah, and this is going to be a turn toward chaos, if you will, in the northern kingdom. Notice, as evidenced by the 6-month reign. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestors had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. We've heard this many times, right? We know he's talking about Jeroboam the first, the one who had erected the bulls, the graven images of the bull at the northern and the southern borders of Israel, and which our Deuteronomistic historian never forgives him for. Verse 10. Shallum, son of Jabesh, conspired against him. So we were told already that he only reigned 6 months. Now we're getting the details as to how this came about, why it was only 6 months. Son of Jabesh conspired against him and struck him down in public and killed him and reigned in place of him. We don't get any details, no details. That's one of the reasons why the book of Chronicles is kind of fun to read, because it tells the same, it covers the same time, but it gives us more detail, if you will. Verse 11, now the rest of the deeds of Zechariah are written in the book of the Annals of the Kings of Israel. If you want history, go read it there. That's kind of what he's saying. Some people think that this is a reference to the actual book of the Chronicles. Who knows? Verse 12, this was the promise of the Lord that he gave to Jehu. Your sons shall sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it happened. So even in all of this paradigmatic history, our narrator is wanting to bring back to the fore that the Lord is still in control, even though the kings are horrible, and there's going to be a time of comeuppance eventually. Well, the word of the Lord still prevails. Remember who Jehu was? Jehu was that king. He hadn't been king. He was anointed to be king secretly, and he went on this killing rampage and cleaned house, literally, with in the northern kingdom. He killed the king, and then he was like told he would the evil king of the north, and he was told that his sons would reign up to the 4th generation. And sure enough, that's what Shallum, or that's what Zechariah was. Zechariah was that 4th generation. So Jehu, and then I think it was Amaziah or Ahaziah, something like that, and then Jeroboam and Zechariah. Okay, so the dynasty of Jehu ends, right, with this 6-month reign. So remember, Jehu, even though he cleaned house and got rid of the Baal worshipers, killed them all and all of that, he still hadn't done a whole lot of good in the big picture, although our narrator really loves what he did do. And the fact that he only got 4 generations is just evidence that, oh yes, well, the Lord is still, the word of the Lord still fulfills. Shallum, son of Jabesh, began to reign in the 39th year of King Uzziah of Judah. He reigned 1 month in Samaria. So again, so we see that Zechariah was only 6 months. Now this guy who basically effected a coup, only 1 month. Remember, anytime we see the word Samaria, it reminds us that we're talking about the capital city of the northern kingdom, okay? Then Menachem, son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria. Now, Tirzah had been the capital city of the northern kingdom. I think it was prior to Ahab. I think it was Ahab who remember the one who was married Jezebel? I think he's the one who built the city of Samaria. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, Tirzah kind of has that flavor of like, if you're from Tirzah, what that means is, oh, remember Tirzah, it used to be so wonderful. We used to be the capital city. We're not anymore. You know, that kind of thing. he struck down Shalom. So then Menachem, son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria. He struck down Shalom, son of Jabesh, in Samaria and killed him. He reigned in place of him. So we basically have a game of musical chairs going on in the northern kingdom. Now the rest of the deeds of Shalom, including the conspiracy that he made, are written in the book of the Annals of the Kings of Israel. Okay, again, this is why we call it paradigmatic history. He's just kind of phoning it in. He's not really giving us a whole lot. At that time, Menachem sacked Tifsa, not Tifsha, Tifsa, all who were in it and its territory from Tirzah on, because they did not open it to him. He sacked it. He ripped open all the pregnant women in it. Whew. So the prophets Hosea and Amos have a lot to say about the horrors of this kind of warfare. This is imitative of the way the Assyrians were conducting warfare. Now, the Assyrians were the power to the north now. They had displaced the Arameans or the Syrians, and so now we are firmly in that realm of time when there's a new threat to the north that's overtaken the old threat, but there's still a threat. Okay, in this reference to ripping open the pregnant women, this was a standard thing of war. This is a part of the way of the horribles, the atrocities of war, how the innocent suffer, and all of that. There is a lot said about this kind of thing in Hosea and in Amos, which we're going to have to get to pretty quickly, because this is what the time they're talking about in their prophecies. So when we hear about sacking Tifsa, this was an Israelite town. This is a thing. Remember Guernica? The Guernica thing? Okay, remember the Nazis, and the bombing of it, who is that guy, the King of Spain guy that Franco, right, ordered the bomb. Anyway, the horrors of war, kind of like Guernica, that's what Tifsa starts to symbolize. And we hear the prophets talking about that. Okay, that's what we find in the other books like Amos and such. So, which we'll have to go to eventually. But let's go on. Verse 17. In the 39th year of King Azariah of Judah, Menachem, son of Gadi, began to reign over Israel. He reigned 10 years in Samaria. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They're always evil, remember? Our historian here, if they don't take down those bulls that Jeroboam the first put up, guess what? Evil, automatically evil. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. All of this is just strophic. These are the lines he likes to say a lot, right? King Paul of Assyria came against the land. Menachem gave Paul. Now, who's Paul? Okay, there was a king of Assyria called Ashurbanipal. I can't remember if he was like Ashurbanipal IV or something like that. But his name is put in, no, not Ashurbanipal, Tiglath-Pileser III. Sorry. Yeah, Paul was Tiglath-Pileser III, who ruled 745 to 727 in Assyria. And he's starting to put pressure on the northern kingdom, okay? And so what do you do in response to somebody who's about to take you over? You pay tribute to like buy them off so they don't overtake you. Look what he does. Menachem took or gave Paul 1,000 talents of silver so that he might help him confirm his hold on the royal power. This is basically a ransom to not take him out of power. Verse 20, Menachem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy, 50 shekels of silver from each one, to give to the king of Assyria. One of the things that the prophets talk about is that, I'm talking about Amos, Hosea, Micah, those the prophets that were writing during this time or ministering during this time, which this writer doesn't, this narrator doesn't tell us about, is the oppressive policies of the kings, okay? And in the eyes of the prophets, that spells doom for Israel. The paying that off to the foreign king was very onerous, okay? It was very onerous. The taxation was very onerous and heavy for the people, and that's one of the reasons why the prophets said that God couldn't let this abide, because that was just too, it was not fair. It was just too oppressive, okay? So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Okay, so it's basically, okay, well, this time, okay, well, you were to pay him off, but maybe not next time. Now, the rest of the deeds of Menachem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Annals of the kings of Israel? Menachem slept with his ancestors, and his son, Pekahiah, succeeded him. Again, paradigmatic history. In the 50th year of King Azariah of Judah, Pekahiah, son of Menachem, began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 2 years. Notice another short reign. This is illustrative of the circling of the drain, of the dissolving into chaos. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. We've heard that before. Pekah, son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired against him. So there was a Pekahiah, son of Menachem, and now there's this guy named Pekah. Actually, it's basically the same name, but there is going to be another coup, conspired against him with 50 of the Gileadites. Now, a Gileadite is somebody from Gilead. Gilead is the Transjordan side. By that time, they were non-Jewish, this represents an external coup from outside, and attacked him in Samaria, in the citadel of the palace, along with Argob and Ariah. Literally, those words mean eagle and lion. It might be that they're referring to some statues, and he got killed near them, or it could have been names of cities, which we really don't know. But this is just one more example of how our narrator just gives us little tidbits of facts, doesn't give us a whole lot. He killed him and reigned in place of him. So a coup, right? Now the rest of the deeds of Pekahiah and all that he did are written in the book of the Annals of the kings of Israel. Okay, so Pekahiah suffers a coup via Pekah, all right? In the 52nd year of King Azariah of Judah, so remember that's that same king that the prophet Isaiah is ministering to. We haven't read Isaiah yet, but just so you know, this is going on. Isaiah's ministry is going on during this time. Pekah, son of Remaliah, he's the one who just killed Pekahiah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, began to reign over Israel and Samaria. He reigned 20 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which had caused Israel to sin. Are we tired of hearing that yet? In the days of King Pekah of Israel, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, this is the one who was referred to earlier as Pul, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria came and captured Ijon, Abel, Maacah, Janoah, Kedesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Israel. Let me back up here. This is Tiglath-Pileser III. Maybe Paul was a reference to Tiglath-Pileser II or something like that. But this is our narrator telling us that, okay, the disintegration, the chaos that's dissolving, even though they were paid off earlier, the Assyrians were paid off earlier, that's running out, and now they're losing all these are names of cities way up in the northern area. And so the Assyrians are starting to exert their force, and the northern kingdom is having less and less power against it. This is what we call the Syro-Ephraimite War. It's happening for quite a while. We're going to see it more and more in the reign of King Ahaz of Judah, but this was the setting for what we find in the prophecies of, yes, Isaiah, and Hosea, Micah, Amos. We're dead in the middle of all of that. Notice, and he carried the people captive to Israel. This is the first of the exiles. This isn't the final judgment yet, but this is the beginning of that thing that happens when the final judgment does fall, and there's no more, where the kingdom actually dissolves altogether. It's not there yet, but it's circling the drain, okay? Verse 30. By the way, we have historical extra biblical sources. We have extra biblical sources, sources outside the Bible that talk more about this. They provide a whole different kind of a timeline. But we do know that this stuff we're seeing about the campaigns of Tiglath-Pileser, that these were valid. These were actually names of campaigns that he did when he took these cities and areas historically. Verse 30, then Hoshea, son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, son of Remaliah, attacked him and killed him. He reigned in place of him in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah, giving us that. The date references to the king of Judah. And here's the first time we have the reference to Uzziah, which is the king name of Azariah. Okay. This is once again illustrative of the dissolving and the chaos that the northern kingdom has turned into, because there's yet another coup. Verse 31, now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did are written in the book of the Annals of the kings of Israel. Okay, all right, well, let's finish this up. Verse 32, in the second year of King Pekah, son of Remaliah of Israel, King Jotham, son of Uzziah of Judah, began to reign. Now, we have we're getting a southern kingdom tidbit here. He was 25 years old when he began to reign and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. We hadn't heard much about Jerusalem and Judah for a while. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. We get in our narrator, who likes Judah a little bit more than Israel, always gives us the mother's name of the king of Judah. We don't get that for Israel. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. Nevertheless, here it comes, the high places were not removed. The people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. That is, so our Deuteronomistic narrator, his biggest problem with the southern kingdom was that none of the kings seemed to have been able to eliminate the doing sacrifices outside the Jerusalem temple. And the northern kingdom guys never got rid of those bowls that Jeroboam I had erected. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. Again, in the middle of all the paradigmatic history, all our narrator gives us as far as what they actually did, which is just one little snippet, one thing that he likes, okay? He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord. Okay, here it comes. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham, see, not interested in telling us a whole lot about him. Just gives us just a little morsel. And all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Annals of the kings of Judah? In those days, the Lord began to send King Rezin of Aram and Pekah, son of Remaliah, against Judah. Bum, bum, bum. This is a precursor to the time when the Assyrians and the northern kingdom start to join forces against Judah, even, right? Jotham slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His ancestor, his son, Ahaz, succeeded him. Okay. Oh my goodness. So I think I've said what I need to about all of this, but we're smack dab in the middle of that time when the prophets are speaking. We're about to get to that time when Isaiah was prophesying. I don't know what point, what would be the best point to diverge off and to look at those books, because I don't want to lose the total flow of this book. So I got to figure that one out. If you have any if you have any opinion about that, let me know. I'll take it under advisement. Yeah, there we go. So that is it. Until next time, shalom.